all of our expenses. We collect water bills to cover all of our water
It already
expenses.
says
That's
it in the capital plan.
It's in and out. There's no extra. We don't run out, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The only, and just as a counterpoint, now this is completely moot because we don't have a bond rating and you do. But previously, I guess the argument could be made that because if Light and Water or the sewer department didn't have their own bond rating, they were borrowing against the town's bond rating, which means the town would ultimately be on the hook for that debt. But again, that's a moot point because that's not the situation as it exists now. But if there's no other discussion, we can move to a vote. Julie?
Excuse me, it's been a while since the motion was made.
So
What are we voting on?
we're voting on the language as is to include, again, not to include this in the warrant. Okay. Yep. And we had a first and a second. Julie?
Yes.
John?
No.
Diane?
No.
And I'll vote no as well. So, okay. The next item that we have, which I'm sure is why many of you are here, is to discuss the health insurance by non-union and union personnel. We added this, I had received questions from individuals, actually, well, I won't say. I received emails from individuals inquiring as to what exactly was going on with the health insurance, and I know that Diane did as well, and so she asked, you asked, right? She asked for this to be added onto the agenda so that we could just openly discuss any concerns and I know that Mr. Markle did explain kind of where we are during his administrative report, but just to give an opportunity to answer any questions as best we're able to at this point, because obviously health insurance is probably one of the largest costs. I know for many people it's larger than their mortgage overall what the total policy costs are. So I know that this is an important issue for our town employees. So I don't know if you wanted to, Mr. Markle, reiterate kind of where we are, just so we were jumping off.
I also, earlier in the evening, I did pass around a letter from a resident requesting to be appointed. And in general, we've had 2 meetings. We've had representation from current employee groups, bargaining groups. We have not had any representation from the retiree group, which is a significant part of the health insurance activity of the town. So I would ask at some point the Board of Selectmen to make an appointment of a retiree representative. To reframe the issue, I had said earlier that in the current fiscal year that we would rebid our contracts as best we could for all the services that we contract for. I think it makes sense to do that periodically. If we don't do it, we can guarantee that the costs will creep up. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we put our property and liability insurance out to bid, and we have convened the meeting of the Insurance Advisory Committee twice to talk about the town's health insurance plan, the fact that the cost is going to go up next year very significantly, and to try and come up with a strategy to deal with it. What came through, certainly to me, in both meetings is that although the town has the right to move our employees into the GIC, that employees would be strongly opposed to that. And at a time when wages have been flat for several years, reducing that benefit would not sit well, and I can appreciate how people feel about that. That said, we still have a very significant increase facing us. And if you were here earlier, I explained that we have a limited amount of funds to cover it. It could very well happen that 2 items in the budget, school budget, health budget, could consume all of the new money that we have for the coming fiscal year. And that would mean raises as well. I think the selectmen and I have all said that that's our top priority, to provide increases for our employees. But clearly, we have to control our costs as best we can, and frankly, do some juggling here to try and accommodate the needs that I think we obviously recognize. And I'm hoping that after several meetings, there's an understanding on the part of employees that we need to work together to control these costs. And I think that's where we are. On the 30th, at 10 o'clock, we're having a session with our current network provider, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, or Maya. Maya may send the representative, to talk about what they're currently providing and any recommendations that they might have. I think it's only fair to let them speak, and then following that, the next meeting that we have, we're going to have our consultant in, who I'm hoping, I had a conversation with him today, will have competitive bids from other health providing networks, namely Harvard Pilgrim, Fallon, and Tufts. And so in looking at our health care benefits and costs, we hope to come out of this with a little less damage than 8.9%, and hope to be able to make ends meet for the budget next year.
If I could just speak.
That's essentially it.
Right, thank you. And just as I view it, at least, is that obviously when you want to lower your car insurance, you can either drop coverage or you can change providers and see kind of who can do a better job. And as I understand it, what the committee is kind of in the process of, or where they are now, is that it's not the dropping of coverage, it's the looking to see if maybe there's another provider that can provide it. And because, and I think as the town administrator pretty clearly stated, our issue comes into with a Proposition 2.5, as it often does with our budget issues. We can only raise the levy limit by 2.5% a year. So if the school's assessment goes up 5.2% and health insurance goes up 8.9%, those are obviously way out of, double and triple, almost quadruple what we can raise the levy limit. So that money has to come from somewhere else other than raising the levy limit. And we are not, at least I am not, going to ever support using, again, free cash to cover our day-to-day expenses, because then we don't have free cash, we have to shut down town government for 2 months to make up the difference. So if there's no place else to cut it, the only other, well, there's two options. One is an override to pay for it, and the other option is to look for a service provider, if possible, who can offer the same benefits but at a reduced cost.
Excuse me, one more point.
Yeah.
These meetings are open.
Oh, right, and they're open, so
They're
everyone
open.
is welcome to
So-
attend. And not just, they're open to the public, so.
Right.
The
Yeah,
public and certainly all employees, not just those who are in the bargaining units.
Right. Yes.
Just as a point of reference, our present cost for health insurance represents 10% of what we tax. So that's a significant portion of our taxation is for just health insurance.
Can I speak?
Yes, sure.
I think that when your employees' wages are less than everyone else surrounding you, and then you take away another benefit, not to say that we should not look at reduced costs at all. I think that definitely the consensus was that I heard from several people was the company that Bob mentioned, that they do not want that at all. But they did not say to me that they wouldn't be willing to negotiate some other things to help with that. Everyone knows the situation that we're in, but I don't think that I feel like obviously we want to give you raises. That would be great, but to give you a raise and then take it all away from you is an absolute moot point. So yes, we have to look at lowering costs, but I feel that we have to take seriously the needs of our employees, because it's going to cost a lot of money when they say, I'm done. And that is also what I've heard. I will be done. Now we have to retrain people, and we've had a hard time getting people. We want to keep who we have here. They've done an amazing job for us. And I think that obviously we're out to look for, to look out for our employees. So it's not just, the bottom line can't always be money. It just can't be. It has to really be, these people have families, lives, costs, just like we do. So I just feel that's really, really important to look at all of it, not make a rash decision, and to listen to what they have to say. So I just really, that's why I put it, because if you have something that you want to say, you should say it, and we are here to hear you.
I think that's where we are. We're not looking to jam any changes down the throats of our employees. I think we recognize that salaries and wages in the town are below the standard for the region, and that creates a lot of other issues for the town, including, as we've seen just the last year, the loss of valuable employees, the loss of their skills and training, the difficulty in recruiting that we've had. So I just want to say to everybody what I said last week. I get it. I get it. And we obviously have a problem staring us in the face. We'd like to move forward cooperatively and develop a consensus as to what we need to do to curb some costs.
And I think too, though, that while I completely agree with what Selectman Haley Brooks said, I think that ultimately the bottom line, we have to have a balanced budget. So it is difficult to offer salaries that are at least in the 50 percentile for the county, let's say, when our tax rate is in the bottom 25 percentile. It's extremely difficult to have low taxes, and while people, obviously they've gone up a lot, but compared to other communities, to have taxes that are lower than most communities and still pay our employees and give them the same benefits as other towns do. And unfortunately, we are all held, not captive, but we are all beholden to the will of the voters at the ballot box. So as we know, we just had at our last election, we had the questions about funding an assistant and raises, and voters voted no. So if the voters vote no, that money has to come from somewhere inside the levy limit, so that we don't have to ask voters where that money comes from. And it's disappointing, obviously, to see that, because I know we were all excited to actually be able to add things back. And these aren't like luxuries. These are like, salary and wage increases. To think that $58,000 might have to come off the table just so that we can pay for 2 line items, or the police department and the fire employee, the $78 for the COA bookkeeper, we might not be able to pay now. I mean, those kind of things are ridiculous, I understand. But ultimately, if the voters don't approve increases above 2.5%, it gets really difficult when line items go above that. So,
Yeah,
Yep.
just, if you look at the average tax bill in the area, the average tax bill in town is in the range of $2,600. That's the tax bill in the average house, valued in the 150 to 160 range. If you compare that regionally, the average tax bill in Worcester County is about $1,000 higher. However, if you say, well, just raise taxes, there's a cap on taxes. It's 2.5% a year. Even if everybody in town said, let's raise taxes, we would have to get a vote to raise taxes above the cap. And I think we've seen consistently that the voters are not interested in that. And I get that message too. Some genuinely can't afford it and say, well, I've had residents say, yes, you're right, we need to address these things, but these are harder times for me and I can't afford it. So that's a factor that is very serious in town. So we just can't willy-nilly raise taxes and address the salary and wage issue unless we get an override, and clearly the voters have said we're not providing an override for raises. So those are the circumstances that we have to grapple with in this budget process. Good news is we don't have a crisis. We don't expect layoffs this year. We don't expect layoffs next year. But we have to make ends meet.
yes.
I'm just wondering, why was health insurance picked as the item to save? Just hear me out for a second.
Because it went up more than any other single item did, 8.9%. And as you heard, it represents 10% of our overall budget, just of the tax levy limit. just that one item, so it's hard to find another single item that carries that much.
So 10% of your budget went up 8.9%. Right?
10% of the levy limit, correct, yeah.
So I'm just trying to make a corresponding example, like the light department, light department's got an $8 million budget. Health insurance, I'll use FY15, I'll estimate, the light department, not the employees, the employer is gonna pay about $200,000 for FY15 for health and dental benefits to the 10 employees and the 5 or 6 retirees we have. So that's about 2.6% of my budget.
Right.
So with an 8.9% increase, that makes it about 2.8% of my budget. So I guess what I'm wondering is, why do I have to now tackle with the most difficult, because the collective bargaining agreements with Local 104, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and Local 39, that's not gonna be negotiated between the town and those unions. That's gonna be negotiated between me and my board and the unions. And I've seen negotiations like this drag on years. And we're hearing that we wanna make a change by May. So for the $56,000 in savings that the town's hoping to get, to go from Blue Cross next fiscal year to GIC, I'm just not following that at all. I mean, isn't $56,000 more like 1% of your total budget? Isn't your budget about $5 million?
You're assuming nothing else went up, that's the one thing that went up. Every single item we have went up, on top of then this large one that's 8.9%. And I also think it's a little different here in the town, because as you know, I'm assuming you've paid attention, we have been working with a bare bones. We don't even meet legal standards for many of ours because we just don't have the money to do it. So when one item goes up 8.9%, and I know that other selectmen may have differing opinions on this, and probably most of you have differing opinion than I do regarding the Gansett increase. When it comes to the Gansett increase, because we're below target share, the state sets every year, increases that. So that really is, now granted, the school committee can voluntarily decide to give up that money. I mean, I don't even know if they can legally do that because it's the entitlement of but anyway, that's besides the point. So the 5.2% that goes to Gansett, which is the other large increase, we really can't do anything with because that's state mandated. The state calculates that because we're so far below share that every year they try to pull us up higher. So for instance, Phillipston's increase was only, I think, 1.8%. The school's overall budget did not go up 5.2%. The school's overall budget went up less than 2%, but it's because Templeton's so far under share that the state drags us up to increase at 5.2. That isn't going to change. I think that at this point, the options are to look at, again, if we want to add any of the things back in, as Mr. Markle said, at this point, we're not looking at layoffs, but if we get hit with something like we did before, where it turns out as our accountant goes through things that, there's $200,000 missing here, or we still need to come up with $85,000 for the playground by the end of the fiscal year, thank you, Governor Baker, we're this far all the time from a crisis. And while we're not in a crisis right now, it can be one phone call from the State House saying, we found this error, the DOR found this error, you have to, $200,000 you're actually short, and then we're laying people off again. So I think that's why this is being one item that's looked at. We've discussed going out to bid with our insurances literally since before I was elected. We talked about this and that we were going to do this. So again, there's nothing, we're not going with the least popular plan, as Mr. Markle already said, so that's a moot point. But I think the reason we tackled this is because it's the biggest issue. You say $50,000 like it's nothing. That's 2 or 3 employees here in the town. So that's something. If we increase things $57,000, we can lay off 2 or 3 employees because that's what most of our employees make, probably around $25,000 on average. So, I mean, it's a big deal. It might not be a lot to other departments, but for the rest of the town, that's a pretty sizable chunk of money.
It's not that it's not a lot of money, but it's a lot, this is a lot for the board and I to go through with negotiations on our end,
I'm sure you can handle it. I mean,
we can handle it.
Right.
I'm talking from the standpoint of the amount of time that's gonna go into negotiating, I took great offense to that insurance agent that they come in here and just offered to anybody in the room, not even have any clue. He had no clue who he was standing in front of. He's just throwing this idea out there, just go 70-30, we can talk about that, then you'll be all set. He's got no authority to do that. He doesn't know who is in that room. I'm the one who has to go back to 104 and 39 and negotiate. Would you guys consider a 70-30 split instead of 75-25? But I'm not gonna do that, even gonna do that now, because I'm just not convinced that the savings are switching to GIC are even there. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Well, the switching to GIC, we already discussed, and that's not an issue anymore. So if you want to talk about confusing voters, let's not confuse employees. That's not an issue that we're discussing anymore. So that's not of a concern. That's not something, as we already said, we're talking about same benefits, different carrier. That's what we're looking at. If we can't do it effectively, then obviously we'll have to look at cutting money somewhere else if we want to do anything that's on our add-back list, which I said is far from extravagant. Yes. Sure.
My understanding from the meeting, because I was not there, so there had to be a couple people running the office, is that the increase of 8.9%, there wasn't a letter presented stating that it was going up to that amount of money? Do you have a copy of that letter that we can get?
We don't have it here, we can get it. That came out, that was the message that came out from Maya, the Massachusetts Inter.
That's not for our town, that's statewide, it's going up 8.9%.
No, I'm
So
sorry,
it's not like,
no, that's for us.
that's for us, right.
Maya has a
But the state
range.
agency is telling us.
They've announced this, letter will be coming, but they've announced that for the communities that are in their network, the rate of increase is going to go from 3.5% to 10.5%. And the individual community will have an increase based upon its record, or, its experience module, they call it. In other words, how much of the premium that we pay to them is given back to the town to cover health expenses. All of the health providers like that ratio to be 70 to 75%. In other words, we give them 100%, and they give back, in terms of health services, no more than 70 to 75%. If you're higher than that, if you're taking back a higher percentage, then they typically raise your rates higher. Our experience module is 89%. So for every dollar that we give to them, we take back 89 cents. And that's the fundamental reason why our rate is increasing towards the high end of the range rather than the lower end of the range.
And again, that's public. If anyone,
Yeah, this is not-
anyone can contact Maya and ask what the town's rate is and what it's anticipated to go up. This isn't like a secret. Everything here is very open. So, I mean, I don't know if yeah.
Yeah, they give us in a verbal what the increase will be so we can plan our budget. And then it follows up in writing. Some years you'll have, people will be in really good health, and that's a wonderful thing. And then your percentage will go down. If you have a year where a lot of employees get sick, which is why you have health insurance, okay, then your percentage goes up. It's,
Yeah, we were at
that's the way
4.1
it
last
is.
year.
Right.
Wow. So that's
So there was an increase
yeah.
in the use of the benefit. So when people get sick and they use the benefit, which they should do and need to do, then the increase will go up.
And not that we have any power over this, but as you heard, what was the low number in the range?
3.5.
So 3.5%. So this model of the 2.5%, again, not that we can effectually change it, is completely unsustainable overall. Because the lowest that any community that's a part of the network is going up is a whole percentage more than the 2.5% that we can actually increase that line item.
And Ken, for FY16, 2.5% gained the town $204,000. That's what 2.5% got the town. The target share for the school was 266. That doesn't include the insurance. Okay, it doesn't include raises, it doesn't include anything else. $204,000 is gone. That's what we can raise taxes by.
Which, because of the levy limit, right, actual taxation.
My experience has been, if we go out and we bid this and we aggressively pursue other people, you're going to get a savings the first year, but it doesn't take long for you to get right back to where you were.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep,
It's a big game,
it is.
and
Yeah.
the way you have to play it is to be prepared to bid regularly.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you can rest assured that regardless of the provider, and regardless of how much they tell you they're on your side, your costs are going to go up higher than they should. It's just the way it works out. And, in general, here's a rule of thumb. If any expense in our budget goes up above 2.5% to 3%, how do we pay that? If our revenue is going up 2.5% to 3%, goes up 2.5% because that's what Prop 2.5 allows, and then we get new growth. So our revenue in the town is going up 2.5% to 3% regularly. If any expense in your budget goes up above that, how do you pay that? You starve other departments. And in a sense, that's what's been happening on the municipal side for a number of years, that in order to pay expenses that go above the rate of revenue increase, you have to take money from other operations and other departments. And so, that's the only way you can make ends meet.
Use free cash.
Pardon?
Is the school department?
Yes, it is.
How
yes.
many people do you insure over there?
No, they
No,
are.
it's not insurance, no, I thought it's included in the budget, in the budget scenario. So in other words, if their budget is going to go up, I think it's over 5% if you take this 266 as a total. If they're going to go up 5, in order for us to pay that, we have to shortchange other parts of the organization.
And like, as I said earlier, health insurance and Gansett are our two, Gansett in particular, are our two largest line items. So our two largest line items are the two that went up the most, basically. So that's why we have to look at them. And our ability to tackle or to lower our contribution to Narragansett is hampered basically by the DESE and what we're permitted to do, which then leaves the only other big item is health insurance. And again, if anyone, and I've said this every budget process, if everyone will come forward and have very good reasons why certain things shouldn't be cut. If you can show me where I can cut it or where we can cut it to make up that difference, I am more than happy to oblige. Because we just do not, like I said, we're already operating below legal limits in some areas in terms of what we should have for staff. And so if anyone has any ideas or suggestions as to where other cuts that we can make so that we can completely swallow this 8.9% increase, then I am more than happy to listen.
And I agree with that. If when the selectmen, I assume at the next meeting, vote the budget, the draft that I've given them, when they make whatever changes they're going to make and vote it, it'll be posted on our website. So everyone can take a look at it. It's a spreadsheet, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and anyone who comes up with an idea for savings will have more than a month. We'll have 6 weeks before the actual town meeting, and I think everybody would be open to any recommendations or suggestions for savings.
Yes, sir.
Two things, please. First one, understand that we are not going to look at the GIC any further. Is that what I'm hearing from the board?
We're not gonna what?
Look at the GIC, that's what is that what the
Did you
committee
not
is?
just say that the GIC was going to be off the table since the employees spoke out negatively against it at the last meeting?
That's what I said, yes.
Okay, so the GIC is off the table. So then, the other point would be, if you're looking for ideas, we did speak with Mr. Boyle about ways to tweak our plan. I think he was going to look at different options that we could have to make some mild modifications to the plan to tweak it, to maybe bring our percentage down a little bit. I think that would probably be a discussion for another day, once Mr. Boyle does have concrete numbers, once we've been out to look at other companies
Okay.
and see what they can provide us with.
And again, just to reiterate, we're not putting ourselves in a position, the full 8.9% is included in the budget, correct?
Not yet,
Not yet, but, okay.
but
But
in
the
other
money's
words-
available to cover it, assuming
Yes.
we don't do anything else.
That's the add-on.
exactly.
Okay.
We can cover 2 items with money that I see available now for fiscal 16. Whether or not we can cover health insurance and the school increase, and then other items on that add-back list is not resolved, but I think those 2 items are going to consume the lion's share of our new money for next number, an absolute right to impose. but we're not going to do it. Because I recognize the way people feel about that. And if your wages were above average, I might have a different attitude. But given where you are on the wage side, we clearly would not be responsible to the town and the taxpayers to twist arms and squeeze on the benefit side. But we also want to bring that under control. So that's the name of the game here, of what we're trying to do. And if we don't do it, as I said earlier, most of you will see your income go down next year, because whatever increase we can provide on the wage side will be eaten away by the increased premiums that you're going to have to pay for health insurance.
Is there anything else before we move on? Okay, if not, I'd like to, well, we have other issues on the agenda, but I want to thank everyone for coming and participating, and as always, feel free to contact any one of us. I'm sure I speak for everyone on the board with your questions and concerns regarding this very important issue. The last item that we have on the agenda before we vote to go into executive session, if we do so, are Selectmen's comments. Julie, did you have anything you wanted to?
Just a couple of things. On Saturday, we had a painting party, if you want to call it, at the senior center, and a lot of work got done. There'll be another paint date at 9 o'clock this Saturday coming up on the 27th, I think. Also, there's, on April 14th, there'll be a hearing by the planning board about discontinuing roads in town. I think this is an important hearing. I'm planning on attending. It's
I'm
about
sorry, I missed it.
Discontinuing roads, the planning board discontinuing.
about Templeton Developmental Center. After the winter we just had, I don't see us having any ability to plow and maintain those roads. So, invite y'all to attend.
John, do you have anything?
Well, based on what Julie just said, I think we may come to a point where we may have to discontinue Freight Shed Road. But to do it now is premature, and it's going to hamstring our abilities to negotiate anything with the state. So, it might be a feel-good, short-term thing, but to do it now would be foolish.
When is that meeting? The 14th
At what time?
of April.
6:30, we actually just 6:30.
So 6:30,
Tuesday night, yeah.
Tuesday, April 14th in this room. Do you have anything else, John?
No.
Diane, do you have anything that you would
Yeah,
like to?
I just wanted to give you all an update that Alicia O'Malley and I have been working together on the personnel policy. It's been really nice to go through it with someone. There's, 50 some odd pages, and we've gotten to page 20. Because we're going through it's a lot to go through. We've been looking at all the laws and all the, changing it as we go. They're probably, when you get it back, won't have all the strikeouts you might be used to seeing, but we've really I think we've done a very good job about going through and making it cohesive to how, it all should be worded in each law. And then we just said that each year we would try to put we would put it to the board and review the whole thing, and that way it would just always be updated. So I've been coming in 1 or 2 times a week. We've been trying for a couple of hours to get together every week. So I just wanted to give you where we were at, and that I wasn't ignoring that. We've been actually working on it for several weeks.
Thank you for doing that.
As Holly can attest to. I'm kind of loud, but it's been a good, it's a good working session. She's wonderful. I don't know if you all know her, the new HR person, but she's very bright, and she's very energetic, and just a good people person. It's nice to be in the office with Holly too, and really see what everyone does. So I've enjoyed it.
And is that it?
Yeah.
The only thing that I had was I just wanted to, again, and I know that Bob had mentioned it in his administrative report, but just to thank Kate and Bernie for coming in. I know Bernie was here. I came before, on my way to work, and he was already here this morning.
Oh, wow.
When I came, he was already parked. So I just want to, I think, did Kate leave too? I think
Yeah.
so. But I just want to thank them in absentia for their work with that, because it helps, because every hour they volunteer is an hour we don't have to pay someone $25 an hour from the accounting firm to look at things, so. If there is nothing else from the select board, at this time, we will, if per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21-3, if anyone has a motion to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which I do, and per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21-2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-personnel, if the chair so declares, and I do. And please include in your motion whether you are moving to reopen an open session after the executive session adjourns.
So moved, and we will not reopen in open session.
Is there, first and second, any discussion from the board? If not, Julie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so thank you all for coming.